Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Erin, I'm Queen Bee Tarot, and today I'd like to talk to you about the eclipse that just happened. But what's different about this video compared to things that you might have seen online already about this eclipse is that I want to talk about the bigger picture. Because in astrology, it's really easy to get so focused on the details and the single event that's happening in our timelines, and we forget to look at the bigger picture. And that's one of my favorite parts about astrology, is seeing greater patterns at play. And the reason this video might be really helpful for you is because a lot of people are going through really, really hard times right now. And that's an understatement, to say the least. I would like to be able to bring you hope by telling you that a greater karmic theme at play is going to be wrapping up in the spring of next year. There's a lot of different factors happening here. It's not just about the planets and what they're doing, but these eclipse cycles have a sort of a message, an energy, a title, if you will, that gives a theme to all of the little details that are playing out in our lives. Do you remember back before COVID, how everybody was feeling really hopeful? Everybody was talking about the age of Aquarius and how it's a new wave for humanity and things are going to be awesome from here on in. And then we got COVID. So what I wanted to compare the astrology to is metaphors that are really easy to understand. So let's say we think of society or the world in general, or even our lives, as a building. It takes a really, really long time to get where we are. The way that society is, the way that we are as people, didn't happen overnight, just like a building. It takes time to create these systems in our lives, the lives that we live on a personal level, on a professional level, and society in general, right? So we're comparing these systems and structures to a building. Say we look at the building, we're looking at our lives, we're looking at society, and we say, hey, you know what? I'd really like things to be different. So in a building, that would be renovation, right? We've decided that we want things to be a little bit different. We have a vision for the future, and now we're ready to undertake it. What happens next? If it's a renovation, you tear down the old to make way for the new. And when it happens in our lives, professional and personal, when it happens in society, we see the teardown. We think about the Tower card from astrology that represents basically everything falling apart. And we go, oh my God, what did I do to deserve this? Why is this happening? Well, if we're able to take the emotion out of it and think about all these things, just like a building, we are going through a renovation period. It is messy. It is yucky. It's not the fun part of building a new future, but it is a necessary part. And so my heart and my love goes out to all of you that are struggling right now. I do want to be able to give you definitive signs here in the charts that I'm about to show you that the end is near. This destruction process, this renovation process is wrapping up. And it will reach wrap-up period in the spring of next year. And then after that, we are on to new things and new karmic themes at play. So what I wanted to talk about is this metaphor for renovation, because when we're able to take the emotions out of it, when we're able to see the forest instead of just looking at the trees, instead of looking at all these things that are falling apart in our lives, which are valid and real, I'm not taking away from that. When we're able to see the bigger picture, sometimes that brings us peace. Because instead of looking at all these little things and the details and the ways in which we are struggling, when we can see a pattern, when we can see a theme happening, then it's easier for us to grasp the lesson, take steps to make things better, and start moving towards the new future that we're hoping for. So this eclipse cycle that's been happening in Taurus and Scorpio has been bringing out some really, really intense feelings for us. Back when we were feeling all hopeful and talking about the age of Aquarius, the eclipses were happening in Gemini and Sagittarius, which was all about our close circles of friends and society in general. There was a theme of hope and positivity because that's what those signs represented. What's happening now with Taurus and Scorpio, Taurus is all about having our needs met and that's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And Scorpio is all about the deeper feelings, what it feels like to be alive, what it feels like to be struggling, what it feels like to be in love. So I talked about this polarity in my last video. Feel free to check it out. There's a lot of really good information in there. But that's the polarity, having our needs met and our emotional connections to either having those needs met or not having those needs met. And everything during this eclipse cycle, Taurus and Scorpio, is felt on a very intense level. In order for us to make change, first we have to notice what it is we want changed. And that in itself, the awakening to our issues, the awakening to our challenges and what just doesn't feel right, that part is like renovation. It's messy, it's yucky, it's not the funnest part, right? So what's happening is we have had brought to light karmic patterns that are repeating in our lives so that we can be aware of them, because once we see them, we can't unsee them. And then something that bugs us enough, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, if we are bothered enough by circumstances or situations in our lives, we will take action to change them. Now, the challenge happening with the eclipse that just happened is that often we tread the line between, well, I'd like to change, but change feels really scary and uncomfortable. So for now, I'm just going to stay with how things are. And that's something that we as humans do. It's universal. It's not personal. It's how we are. What's happening right now is the realization that change feels less scary than things staying the same. And that is the magic point in which we make breakthroughs after breakthroughs, because we are no longer anchored to the past. We are ready. We are so very ready for change. So as this eclipse cycle wraps up, the one that we had 2 weeks ago was hopeful. It was positive. It was a new moon solar eclipse. It was an opportunity to kind of get our heads above water, get a breath of fresh air and go, okay, I feel like I can see where I need to go. I feel like I'm making enough progress that I can just kind of take a deep breath and relax a little bit. It was a good vibe. The eclipse that just happened a couple of days ago, pretty much completely the opposite. Anything that came up for you in the last week was likely something that you thought was done. It was likely something that you went, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm dealing with this again, seriously? But what's important to notice is that these cycles, these things that have been happening for us in our lives, these repeating patterns, used to be fed by repeated responses. Our habitual responses, the way we act without thinking, the way that we are emotionally triggered in certain situations, those are habitual, just like a building. They take a long time to get there. They're going to take a long time to change. We can't expect change overnight. We do have to be willing to face each challenge and each situation with new eyes and a new approach, but it does take effort. So please don't be discouraged if you had all hell break loose in the last week. If something came to a head and it just about broke your spirit, please, please, please don't give up. I promise you, things are wrapping up. I promise you, this is leading to better things. If we are able to stand strong in the face of fear and in the face of difficulty, that is where the magic happens. That we don't run away from our issues, we hold space and we figure out what we can do about them. So in my last video, I was talking about how typically as humans, our tendency is to say that's the issue and that needs to change, which is valid and real. But ultimately, the biggest, most profound change happens inside of us. When we choose to stop engaging, when we choose to stop the pattern in however way we are able to empower ourselves, there's so much that's out of our control, so much. And so the little things that we can change about ourselves, about our choices, about our reactions, it is the least we can do, but it really does make huge, huge, huge waves in our lives. So what I've got here is I'd like to sum up what this big cycle is, what are some important dates that you can look forward to and also to prepare yourself. there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, but it is wrapping up in the coming year. It is up to us to establish new libraries of experiences. Like, for example, you know, if we try a diet and after 2 weeks we haven't lost the weight and we give up, we have not given ourselves enough time to see the results of our efforts, and true results come from effort over time. So just like a building, we can't get halfway into the dismantling part and then go, oh my God, this is too much trouble, screw it, I'm just gonna live with how it is. No, once you're in, you're in. And if you're able to put in concerted effort over time, your life really will change. I talked about the last eclipse cycle. The last eclipse cycle, Sagittarius and Gemini, was a very outer focus. It was community, it was friends, it was communication, it was reaching out, it was networking. Everything about Taurus and Scorpio is inner work. So that's why it's not as comfortable, but for a lot of other reasons as well. Now, the dominating astrological influence of last year and this year as well was Saturn making a 90-degree angle to Uranus. Now, Saturn is, I'm comfortable with how things are. This is how things always have been. And Uranus is the wrecking ball that says, hey, it's time for a renovation. Let's shake things up. This square that, because these planets move so slow, it was an influence for 2 years, which is deeply uncomfortable. A square is a challenge that makes us feel like we're crawling out of our skin. And as much as we were comfortable in our ruts, it just came to be that the way things were was no longer tolerable. So this discomfort that we're experiencing, because we're at the end of that 2-year square, it's like we have reached the top of the mountain. Now we see what needs to happen. The hike down isn't going to be easy, but it's going to be easier than the hike up. So we have reached the pinnacle, the climax, the peak of this challenging period. And as we move forwards, there's a lot of really cool things happening. Pluto, that's been in Capricorn for like 30 or 40 years, something insane, is moving into Aquarius for the first time next year, for the first time in 250 years or something like that. So really cool big changes that all talk about empowering ourselves, enlightening, awakening, and conscious effort to be better humans in general. Saturn is in Aquarius, so it's all about let's do things better, let's do things new. The questions and issues that are happening for us right now is that duality between getting our needs met and whether or not we meet them ourselves, or whether or not we're looking for other people to meet our needs. So any unhealthy habits that you have right now, be them eating, smoking, drinking, relationships, sex, any addictions at all, are probably really, really hard for people to deal with right now. Like, for example, peaks in relationship issues where you're going, oh my God, I can't believe I keep connecting with the same type of partner. What's wrong with me? Let's not ask what's wrong with me. Let's ask, what am I doing that is attracting this kind of person? And what are my core beliefs that allow these behaviors to happen? So one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about was worthiness and wellness. When we are our healthiest, we are loving ourselves unconditionally, and we set our standards pretty high. If we have histories of abuse, trauma, neglect, abandonment, our concept of worthiness might not be very high. And when we find ourselves in unhealthy situations, maybe jobs, maybe relationships, whatever, when we find ourselves in these unhealthy situations, it's important to notice, what is the internal dialogue happening? Are we thinking, what is wrong with me? Are we thinking, I must deserve this? Things like that. If we have any kind of negative inner dialogue, it's really strong right now. And the reason is we need to look at it. We need to change it. And we need to love ourselves. If we're trying to train a puppy, we would not yell at it, because then it's going to run away from us. It's not going to be a healthy, happy puppy. Same thing with our heads. If we beat ourselves up inside of our heads, if our headspace is not a safe space, nothing in life is going to be healthy or positive, because it all starts up here. And what we think and believe changes our hearts and our feelings, and how we feel, and the energy we create and the choices we make are all a result of what we believe about ourselves and the world around us. So this is a very uncomfortable time, but if we are able to change our internal perceptions and beliefs, if we are able to change our habitual responses, if we are able to awaken to our triggers, then everything is going to change. So the key thing is hunger. We are all hungry. Our minds are hungry. Our hearts are hungry. Our bodies are hungry. Our souls are hungry. This is why so many people are interested in tarot and astrology right now, and spirituality and awakening and all of this. It's because we are hungry. And what society used to provide us is no longer satisfying. We are hungry for something more, and that hunger is leading us to a collective awakening where we will all change, but we are definitely in a messy stage of it right now. 19th of November 2021 was the first time we had an eclipse in the Taurus Scorpio axis. Really reached a peak though in April of 2022. And what's happening is this eclipse that we had on November 8th, it was a full moon, so it represents a peak. It represents closure. We are wrapping up this cycle. Now, in April of next year, we will have a new moon solar eclipse in Aries. And that is the beginning of the Aries Libra cycle, which is just starting to come into fruition. But it doesn't immediately start. There's like a little bit of an overlap. So the final time we have an eclipse on the Taurus Scorpio axis is going to be May 5th of 2023. So these are going to be some important dates to look for. You can expect huge changes in your life if you've been putting in the effort. April 19th of next year. And if anything is still yet unresolved, there may be a peak, there may be some sort of crisis or challenge for you to deal with, but it'll be the last one of this Scorpio Taurus theme. That's May 5th of next year. So April, May of next year is when whatever repeating pattern has been happening for you recently, it is going to be wrapping up in spring of next year. So keep the faith. Keep putting your effort forward. Remember that renovation or building a new building or building a new life or building a new society is never going to happen overnight. So if you can just put the effort in and just tell yourself, okay, I just got to make it till May. I just got to make it till April. I promise you there's going to be huge changes in the spring of next year. There's a lot more to it, but I'll talk about that another time. I do have the charts of the last eclipse cycles in front of me, and I'm not going to go too in depth about them, but I did want to mention, like, everything kind of kicked off, like I was saying, really kicked off April of last year, bringing to our awareness the need for change. And it's like a renovation. It's like noticing cracks in the walls. It's noticing that the roof is leaking. So a lot of noticing what hasn't been working. And it did all start to come down to the exploration of ego. We had a huge focus here on who we are, who we think we are, and how we really behave. There was a lot happening. The hope for new beginnings that we experienced at the end of October, it was really hopeful. It wasn't an illusion. It is, whatever was happening for you at the end of October was a glimpse of what it is that is really being worked on by your soul in this lifetime, in this very particular time, and the way in which things are going to change for you in the future. So if you had hopeful moments at the end of October, it was real. Expect to see more of it in the spring. The eclipse that just happened a couple of days ago, a lot of the focus is looking for love in all the wrong places. That emotional need is one of the hardest for us to meet. And whatever our childhood was like, whatever trauma or abuse or neglect or any of that we experienced in our lives, definitely coming to a head. So emotional needs being one of the highest things happening for us. As far as what's happening in society, the American election, for example, and how yes, the focus was sort of on the economy. Yes, people are struggling for money. But what ended up being a huge deciding factor is a women's right to choose. Human freaking rights, people, right? So that fits into the Taurus axis and also the Scorpio axis, because Scorpio is all about life, death, and rebirth, and the process of birth, and the process of death, and all the phases that we as humans are destined to go through. And then Taurus being the North Node, and where we're growing as a collective. That eclipse, which also happened to be election day, funny thing, the moon and Uranus were conjunct the North Node. The North Node is karmic destiny, where we are collectively destined to grow. The moon, women, childbirth, but also emotions and intuition. And Uranus, which is change and upheaval. So I didn't want to jinx things by saying anything before the election, but what I see is that women are affecting change. It is women that are demanding change, and it's all about basic human rights. You cannot deny basic human rights to people. So it's a no-brainer, but common sense is not common. So, the other thing that we're seeing in the South Node is what we're letting go of. South Node is the repeating karma that we're trying to detangle from. And the South Node on the eclipse from a couple of days ago was joined by the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. So that's our egos. That's how we see ourselves. That's our perceptions. That's our communication. And that's how we relate to other people. It is ego keeping us stuck in the past. It is imposing our beliefs on other people that is keeping us stuck in the past. And women are being held back in the past. It's mind-boggling that we're even dealing with this right now. But anyway, I'm going to try not to get too political. The eclipse was made even more stressful by this massive T-square happening, representing that mountain that I was talking about, how we've really reached the peak of this mountain. And the peak of it, the summit, is Saturn. Saturn is how things have always been. It is the patriarchal society. It is the stuck in the rut vibe. So very, very challenging, but if we collectively can embrace emotional health, if we can embrace change and transformation, if we can leave all that domination in the past and collectively evolve as a society, we can do amazing things. Transformation is key here, but transformation requires that we dismantle the old, and it requires that we make way for the new with concerted effort and energy and effort. I said effort twice. So definitely a really challenging time, but we have hope. And what's happening in May, the very last eclipse on this Taurus and Scorpio cycle, is that we have a sailboat shape instead of an anchor. We do have hope. This sailboat shape is going to require that we keep our thoughts pure, is that we think in a healthy way about ourselves and about the world around us. It is going to require that we are aware of our emotions, our triggers, and our responses. It's also going to require that we are mindful of our thoughts, our intentions, and our motivations. We cannot focus on controlling other people. It has to be empowerment. It has to be being the best humans that we can. And our highest path collectively is going to be one of generosity and compassion. So releasing unhealthy emotional patterns and habitual responses, never easy, but that's what's happening. That's what's happening. It's like get in or be dragged kind of thing. So that was my announcement for the collective. I do have horoscopes prepared. These are my horoscopes. These are my notes. I have ADD, so the way that I organize this is with numbers and colors, and I have my thoughts all over the paper. Really cool stuff happening right now. It is deeply uncomfortable, but we are making way for a new beginning. Birth is always messy. So big things happening for us right now is Mars went retrograde at the end of October. Mars is the action planet when it appears to be moving backwards, being named retrograde. It feels as though our actions are either taking longer, or like everything is slow as mud, or things we do end up having to be redone. So this is not a time for pushing. Patience is going to be required. Mars is going to be retrograde until next year. So it's going to be quite a while. So we just have to get comfortable with the slower pace of things and use this as an opportunity to rest as much as possible, to practice being careful and meticulous about all that we do. And also because Mars is retrograde in Gemini, which is kind of like the gift of gab, please be careful what you say. Your words will come back to you. So make sure that you are expressing the highest honor and integrity with your communication. Yes, because it will come back to you. So I'm going to start with Aries and work my way around. I have horoscopes prepared for each zodiac sign. These are written for rising signs. If you don't know your rising sign, just watch the one for your sun sign. Either way is good. You will find a connection. And if you know both your sun and rising sign, watch both of those. So Aries, the full moon was in your second house conjunct Chiron. So really bringing to light any painful experiences. And the thing that you would have noticed, especially about the painful experiences coming up around the eclipse on November 8th, was whether or not what was happening felt in line with your values. Whether or not you felt valued for your time, your energy, or your expertise. So your standards have been raised a lot over the last couple of years, in part because of realizing how much you've grown, and your transformation has been a lot like the phoenix, trial by fire, burning up the old you. Definitely uncomfortable, but now you are more comfortable for things like asking for a raise, or setting boundaries, or raising your expectations of yourself or your life in general, coming from a place of humble acceptance of who you are, but also humble pride of what you have to offer. Keep walking that path of honor. If ego comes in, it's not going to work out for you. But generally what's happening for you, this full moon lunar eclipse was activating karmic cycles, patterns, and this focus on value, especially money. What is happening for you in your financial world, what you do with your money, a combination of budgeting, but also, like I said, asking for a raise or raising the rates that you charge for your business if you're self-employed. Now, the cost of living would have definitely affected you. It's affecting everybody, but it's more pronounced for you because of this focus in your second and eighth houses, which are typically associated with money. But this will be a time of making some breakthroughs and making some important changes in how you spend your time and energy, leading to a better financial future for you moving forwards. Mars for you is retrograde in your third house. So what I said about watching your words and watching what you say is especially true for you, because the third house is the house of communication. Check those emails like 3 times before you send them. Don't send a text or an email, or don't make a phone call if you are feeling emotionally riled up. Practice patience, and please think before you speak. But other than that, the difficulties that you've been enduring are going to reach a place of peace and massive shifts in the end of April next year, right around the time, right after your birthday. So that's a lot to look forward to. Definitely the message I have for you is trust the destruction phase, and trust that if you keep making choices that align with your values, don't cut corners, don't make compromises that make you feel sick or anxious. Make sure that you're consistently aligning with your values, slow and steady. You will achieve what you're hoping for. Next year, major breakthroughs in the spring. So Taurus, the full moon happened in your first house. So a focus on the self. And the lunar eclipse, the sun was coming from the 7th house. So there was light coming from your house of partnership. But you yourself would have felt as though there was a dark cloud over you. Whatever hope and positivity you had in the last couple of weeks, it's quite possible you've been going through in the last couple of days a bit of a depression, a bit of a lull in energy, and feeling like that hope and positivity just wasn't quite there in the last few days. Remember that you, just like the moon, will always go through cycles. If you're not feeling that super jazz hands kind of vibe anymore, give it a couple of days, it will come back. Try not to get too locked into your emotional experience. Do whatever you can to meet those emotional needs with hot bath, tea, maybe dinner with friends, or sleeping in instead of getting up super early. So your process is definitely been, over the last couple of years, really focused on that polarity of self and relationships. Who am I when I'm by myself? Who am I within relationships? There was a time where those were very different things. And now what is happening for you is that you feel far more your authentic self and who you are individually and who you are within partnerships and one-on-one interactions is starting to be relatively on the same page. You have made a lot of changes that allow you to be your authentic self within relationships. What used to happen is that you had relationships where there was a need for a mask and a need for a filter. And that's not the case so much anymore. That way in which you really kind of narrowed down who it was you did want to spend time with, both on a personal and professional level, that hard work is paid off. And now you're able to be much more relaxed in present company, because present company is typically people you want to be with. So good job on all of that work. Now, Mars is retrograde in your 2nd house, Taurus, which means that your efforts to make money feel like they aren't really paying off right now. Don't give up hope. It is going to be a slow start. Whatever new venture you've got going on, whatever way that you changed your relationship with money, it's going to take some time for it to really settle down. But by the new year, January, you're going to notice a restart. And by March of next year, you're going to be off and running, not even looking back. So whatever you can do right now, Taurus, to budget, to not overcommit yourself, to be really thrifty, it will pay off. And those financial habits you establish now are things that you can keep using even when the money is better. And then that will pay off for you in the long run as well. Gemini, I'm going to have a sip of tea here real quick. Hang on. Okay, Gemini, Mars is retrograde in your 1st house. So your theme of identity is definitely going through a lot of tests right now. Applying yourself in a lot of different ways, both, personally and professionally. The way that you see yourself, you're still in this process of kind of figuring that out when it comes to how you speak, how you apply yourself, how you interact with other people. The new beginning that you are cultivating that is intertwined with your identity and your sense of self, it's going to be a bit murky until the new year. But in the first quarter of the new year, there's going to be a sense that you really feel like you've got a good rhythm going on. You feel more comfortable in the new shoes that you're wearing. So just have patience. Everything takes time, especially what you've been undertaking lately. The lunar eclipse that just happened on November 8th, the moon was in your 12th house and the sun was in your 6th house. So there's this desire to be healthier. There is a desire to change your daily routine. And so you're definitely going through a lot of renovations when it comes to just a lot of the basic stuff of life, how you spend each day, how you see yourself. And the eclipse the moon in your 12th house was darkened. So there was a sense, especially in the last week, that like maybe your dreams have been really weird. Maybe you haven't felt like you've been in touch with your intuition the way that you used to. Sometimes I see on forums people talking about when their gifts aren't quite as clear as they used to be. And there's always a fear attached that their gifts are gone, or their imagination or their creativity, it's gone. No, it's not. You're just going through a phase, and that eclipse would have had a very pronounced effect on your creativity, your imagination, and your intuition. So if that's what you're experiencing, just give it a few days. You'll definitely feel better in about a week. In the spring of next year, you're going to have a sense that the way that you apply yourself is so much more in line with your authentic self. What you do every day, how you dress, how you present yourself, you're going to feel so much more in a groove by spring of next year. So just give yourself time to kind of get used to this new way of being. It will all smooth out in the next year. Cancer. The full moon lunar eclipse for you, Cancer, happened. The moon was in your 11th house and the sun was in your 5th house. So there's a sense that you're really feeling better about who you are. You're starting to get a little bit of your groove back, feeling a little bit more creative or playful, like actually joyful. You know, nobody's happy all the time, but you have had so many bad days in a row. It's been really a struggle for you to just kind of keep up the hope. So definitely it's really, really nice to see that this eclipse is a sign that that really challenging phase of the last year and a half, 2 years, it's really wrapping up now. You feel like a new person. This eclipse that happened though a couple of days ago made you kind of question your place in society, whether or not you actually felt like bringing your new self out. There's a bit of kind of testing the water. There's a bit of questioning, am I really feeling better? Am I really feeling refreshed? Give it time. Everything takes time. And this new beginning that you've created by looking after your emotional health and making sure to put yourself first, don't ever feel bad about that. You know, like you can have social events when you're ready. And if you're not feeling ready, there's nothing wrong with that. So take your time and just do what you feel comfortable with. Now, Mars is retrograde in your 12th house right now, and it will be until the next year. So this is a time of going back over how do you deal with your headspace when it's not a safe space? How do you process your intuition? Are you listening to your intuition, or are you going la la la? So this is a great opportunity for you to restart any spiritual or meditative practices that you perhaps used to do but fell out of the habit. Getting yourself on a daily practice of looking after your spiritual and your mental needs and your emotional needs is going to help you feel far more prepared to deal with the world if you have to go out peopling. So definitely while Mars is retrograde, look after your headspace. And if you are feeling peaceful within, it's a lot easier to deal with any kind of chaos that might come up in the world. Leo, the full moon lunar eclipse happened for you, polarizing the 10th and the 4th houses. The 10th house is all about legacy, career, and what is being established. And the 4th house is about emotional health. And because you've been really struggling with your emotional health lately, it's been really hard for you to imagine a future. Now, this eclipse that just happened was not the best wake-up call. It was a time of doing final stages of purging your experience. It's been especially hard for you to make your way through this change over the last year and a half, 2 years, because you were so attached to the reality that you were creating. And when the reality that you were creating was essentially ripped out of your hands, there was this desperation to get it back and emotional upheaval that it was no longer what you thought it was. The Tower card was especially harsh for you recently, Leo, and just trust that whatever is meant for you will never pass you by. And if things had to change in your life, things that you didn't want to change, if change was imposed on you, once you're able to process that emotional reaction to it, there has to be a point where you just dust yourself off and say, all right, acceptance is the key to understanding. We cannot grieve what fell apart any longer. We have to consciously create a healthy future that is better than what I used to think I had. The things that fell apart for you, Leo, were illusions. There was illusions about what was happening. There was illusions about emotional health. There was illusions about feeling safe, and everything that fell apart just was an illusion. And what's happening now is you have the opportunity to create a reality that is real. So for example, if the job fell away, it wasn't helping you be your authentic self. If the friends fell away, they were not recognizing or honoring your authentic self. If there were changes within the home or the family, it was because things were not healthy and they had to change. So it's been especially uncomfortable for you, Leo, but new beginnings are going to be possible if you're able to release the past and start looking in new ways or start applying yourself in new ways that you're able to be your authentic self and in a self-propelled way. It's very easy for you to get stuck in the dynamic of who you are with other people. So the focus for you, especially with this Taurus Scorpio influence of the eclipses, has been, who are you by yourself? What feelings have you suppressed? What things are you potentially denying? And so as you've had to do some really difficult work to come back to your authentic self, if you're able to really, really, really be authentic and make sure that the people you interact with or the job that you take or the career you establish also aligns with your authentic self, then you're going to have a new beginning. But if you keep making choices to either hang out with people or work in a job in which you're truly miserable, but you're like, it's all I've got, that's not a choice that's going to lead to a healthy future. So even though change feels scary, it is going to be your highest path. I hope that makes sense to you. So Mars is retrograde in your 11th house, putting this intense focus on society, but a sense of belonging. Do you feel like you belong to any group or, organization or anything like that? Do you feel as though you have a crew? Do you feel as though you have a social network or supports? If you don't, then that is a place where tons of energy would pay off. But that sense of society accepting you, I'm struggling with my words because there is a desire to be accepted. There is a desire to belong. But if you pretend, if you put on a show or a performance in order to be accepted and belonged, then you're not really accepted and belonged. Only the character you created is. So to really achieve that sense of acceptance and belonging that you really want, and is going to really satisfy your soul, you have to accept and love yourself and be brave enough to be your authentic self. And then you will shine like a beacon in the dark, and other people who are at that same energy will be attracted to you like moths to a flame. So no more creating characters. Okay? Be your authentic self and trust that you will be loved because you are awesome just the way you are without pretending. I hope that makes sense. Moving on to Virgo. Virgo, Aries has been in your sign for a really long time, and it indicates that there's a collective focus on being the healthiest version of ourselves that we can. So this is a human focus, but with Aries in your sign, there's especially a focus on you wanting to be the healthiest individual that you can be. And you've been going through a lot of different phases, but the challenges happening for you lately have brought to light the ways in which you are just as flawed of a human being as anybody else. And I know, Virgo, you try to be your absolute best self, but we all struggle and we all have imperfections. So the more that you try to be the healthiest version of yourself, health feels good, and it isn't perfection. Nobody can be perfect. So if over the last couple of weeks, especially if it has been brought to your attention that at some point you had a negative effect on somebody else, or you made a choice that maybe wasn't the healthiest, your first reaction would have been to go, oh, no. It happens. So if you felt shocked or hurt that somebody had a negative perception of you, the best path for you, Virgo, is to accept it, don't deny it, and work on it. It is never comfortable for any human being to hear that they haven't been the best version of themselves. But for Virgos, with this focus on perfection, or at least trying to be the best, for Virgos, it is almost more painful to hear that they haven't been their best. So if your ego took a little bit of a bruising, put on your big girl panties or big boy panties, and move forwards with your chin up and shoulders back. Do your best. It's going to be okay. You're not flawed as an individual, but as an individual, sometimes you make flawed choices, right? So the full moon for you was happening in your 9th house, and the sun was in the 3rd house. So there was light brought to you in the form of communication from somebody who's relatively close to you. And the emotional darkness came with the realization that you have not quite achieved the level of health or wellness or honor that you hoped you had. And again, it's never a comfortable thing, but if you resolve to do your best moving forwards, then that is a very helpful piece of information. So denying an unhealthy or a negative choice does not lead to growth or learning. You have to accept the feedback that was given to you and commit yourself to growth and learning, even if your ego took a little bit of a bruising. So the kind of redo that you're doing, Virgo, until the new year is going to be all about making sure that the legacy you leave behind is as awesome as you would like it to be, or at least close. So it may be a time of hearing even more feedback about how maybe you didn't make choices at your best. Maybe it might be the need for positive feedback isn't coming. You know, customers at a store, for example, don't typically leave feedback unless they had something negative happen, in which case they're going to go talk to a manager, right? Or something along those lines. When we only hear negative feedback, it is hard for ourselves to see ourselves in a positive light because we don't typically always get that awesome feedback. Sometimes we only hear when things go wrong. So same thing in our lives, you know, like you are especially hard on yourself, Virgo. You know, people might see you as a perfectionist, but they don't know what's going on in your head and how much you struggle with imposter syndrome, anxiety, depression. You know, you make it all look so easy, but on the inside, Virgo, you're hardest on yourself. So the redo that's happening for you is making sure that you don't expect perfection out of yourself, but you are willing to be honest about anything that's not working or unhealthy, and vigilant about taking steps to correct it in the future. So try not to get bogged down in the next few months by any realizations that you still have a lot of work to do, because that's okay. There, you know, as far as humanity, there's not really any finish line. And once you think you approach the finish line, you're going to have your sights set on another one. So just remember, take it by minute, take it day by day, one day at a time. Creating a healthy headspace and a life that you're proud of, it takes time and effort, and it's not as bad as you think it is. So don't be too hard on yourself. Okay, Libra. The full moon lunar eclipse happened for you, polarizing the 8th and the 2nd houses. So a lot like Aries, there's a focus on finances, but especially shared finances and the resources that you have available to you. So whether you're struggling with, you know, perhaps thinking about bankruptcy now, or trying to figure out how you're going to cover your debt, your mortgage, your rent, whatever's happening for you on a financial level, it's definitely overwhelming. And so I just want to be able to validate that your experience is real, and it's definitely going to be stress inducing, but with the sun shining from the second house, we have a definite sense that a new beginning for your finances is on the horizon. What the struggle is that when, for example, if you're self-employed and you just don't get enough bookings in 1 week or 1 month, you start to fear for the future. So remember that you and life will always have phases. If you're going through a phase where there's not very much work for you right now, take it as an opportunity to brainstorm new ideas, to network and see what other opportunities are available to you, or rest. Novel concept, but rest is really good. And if we recharge our batteries, then we're more prepared when that work does start coming in to tackle it, because we are so ready to go. So if you're having, if you're struggling with that emotional connection to the money not happening, it also might be helpful for you to examine whether or not you have any negative or self-limiting beliefs around your income being a sign of how worthy or great you are. You know, not everyone is going to get paid what they're worth. If you're not getting paid what you're worth, then it might be a time to reconsider either asking for a raise, getting a new job, or raising your rates if you're self-employed. There's definitely the cycle of focus on finances, how you feel about the finances, how well you are equipped to pay for your expenses, and whether or not there's any room for luxuries. This has been an intense cycle for the past 2 years, and it is going to be shifting in the spring. You as a Libra are going to have an intense focus on leaving behind the old, especially how you relate to other people and how you see yourself in the context of relating to other people. There's going to be a huge focus on you starting in April of next year. So the shift will move away from finances and be more about identity and relationships. So just want to be able to tell you the end is near, dear Libra. If you've been really struggling with finances, with your energy levels, with deep questions about life, the universe, and everything, you will find peace of mind and a sense of huge changes happening by April of next year. Mars, for you Libra, Mars is retrograde in your 9th house. So you may be rethinking whether or not you want to either further your education or maybe take some time off to travel. For you, you are going to be rethinking where and when you feel restricted in your ability to take action or have freedom of movement. So if you feel like if you've been just dying to travel for ages, it's gonna just hit this point where you're like, okay, life is too short, I'm doing it now. Or if you've been thinking about getting an education over the next 3 months, you're gonna make a solid decision about whether or not you're going back to school, or maybe a little bit of extra training would help you in the long run with your career. So definitely a focus on expansion, travel, philosophy, and where and when you feel restricted, straight through to the new year. And you may be even going to the point of taking huge action in the spring of next year to rectify anywhere in which you feel like you've been held back or things aren't happening for you. So definitely big changes for you, Libra, starting in the first quarter of next year. Scorpio. Dear Scorpio, this focus on your sign has been pretty intense the last little while. Full moon for you happened in your 7th house, and the sun, of course, was in your 1st house. So there's a sense of feeling like you're just getting back to your old self. There's a resurgence in confidence. Maybe your energy level is up. You're just feeling pretty gosh darn good these days, which is awesome. But you may have had a really emotional situation come up for you in the last week within a relationship. Whether there was a sense that you just didn't get the emotional response you were hoping for from someone. Maybe it's someone you're close to and they gave you the cold shoulder, or maybe somebody was harsh or just careless with their words with you recently. Definitely kind of like a dark cloud over your relationships in the last week. It is not a sign of things to come, but it is a sign of anything that is still yet unresolved within you. So for example, if you have a really close friend and you don't necessarily know that they're going through a hard time because they didn't tell you, and then you reach out and you're like, hey, and they don't write you back, and you're like, oh, that's strange. And then you reach out again, and maybe they just write back with one word. They didn't share with you that they're having a hard time. So your perception is, oh my God, maybe they don't like me anymore. Maybe they hate me. Maybe I did something to piss them off. The internal perception is to go on to a deep internal level of emotional turmoil if what somebody else says or does or doesn't say or do rubs you the wrong way. So whatever way in which you were triggered within the context of relationships, especially over the past week, it is simply a sign of how maybe you have unmet needs that instead of looking for others to meet those needs, make sure you satisfy them yourself. Or if you find that you're triggered by somebody else's silence or lack of communication, it's an opportunity for you to ask for clarification instead of jumping to conclusions. So just take a moment to reflect on those emotional responses that you had over the last week, and what parts of yourself might need to be healed that your attention has been brought to. Mars is retrograde in your 8th house, Scorpio. So from now until the new year, there's going to be a sense of having to rethink your approach to either shared finances, like with a partner. Maybe it's going to be about writing a will. Maybe it's going to be about helping a family member write a will, or follow a will if somebody has passed away. Mars being retrograde in your 8th house is going to represent action taken, but more on a spiritual or energetic realm, with things that are real but not necessarily tangible. A sense that the action that you take, it matters more to you, or it will matter more to you from now until the next year, that the action you take feels good on an energetic and a karmic level. You're going to feel especially conscious of when either yourself or other people around you act in a way that is not karmically healthy. And so anything in your life, including people, interactions, jobs, whatever, anything that doesn't feel like it's karmically in your highest path, you're going to be taking action to either change it or distance yourself from it. So you're going to be especially conscious of energy and energetic patterns and the greater meaning behind the things that are happening in your life. So take all the time you need to reflect on that, and make sure that when you journal or when you process your experiences, that you are removing any possible confirmation bias that might be in there. We tend as humans to just have a confirmation bias that if we already think something, then we're going to perceive situations and say, oh yeah, that confirms it, instead of staying open to new information. So again, like if something happened within a relationship, your confirmation bias might make it so you jump to a conclusion about what the other person meant, or anything like that. Whereas what's going to be happening for you because of Mars retrograde is you have to be conscious of those unconscious perceptions, any ways in which you jump to conclusions, any ways in which you fill in the blanks when there's only silence, any ways in which you automatically judge yourself or other people's intentions. Those are all going to be coming to light for you so that you can take action on anything that isn't healthy or isn't true. So yeah, illusions versus reality for you, Scorpio. But that focus is going to wrap up in spring of next year. So will the eclipse cycle. So all this heavy, intense energy for you, by spring of next year, it's going to be wrapping up and wearing off. So you can take a sigh of relief. Sagittarius. The full moon lunar eclipse for you is happening, polarizing the 6th and the 12th houses. So there's been a lot coming up for you when it comes to themes of physical health, mental health, daily routines, and dreams. So all the things that have been kind of coming to light for you, it's been really, really hard because there's a sense for you that change is being imposed on you, but at the same time, that change has been a long time coming. And as a Sagittarius, it is far more comfortable for you to just go with the flow and stay positive and hope things will get better, you know, or every now and then you might be like, oh my God, this sucks. But for the most part, you try and just be a positive, helpful, cheerful person. And that's not always possible. And more and more, you've been feeling resentful, you've been tired, you've been frustrated. And so what happens sometimes is if we subconsciously think, I don't like this, I don't want to do this anymore, and we think this over and over, but we don't take any action, well then all that energetic equity starts to manifest in change being imposed on us. So I remember a time I used to think every single day, I don't want to be cleaning houses. I don't want to be cleaning houses, but I had to pay the bills. Well, I thought it long enough that I put my back out, my entire arm went numb, and I literally couldn't clean houses. So we have ways of kind of creating this change from a subconscious energetic level, even if we didn't necessarily mean to. Sometimes we manifest these things. So if you reflect on whatever it is that you've been thinking for the last couple of years that you wanted to change, but you didn't take any action to do it, well, now that's the change that is essentially being forced upon you. So the best thing for you to do is swim with the current. Get an oar, catch a wave, and ride this energetic happening to the other side where you find your solution. When you wanted this change, but the way that it's happening is not how you wanted the change to happen, there can be an emotional reaction where you go, oh my God, no, this isn't what I wanted. But if you really go deep and examine your subconscious, you will realize that it actually is in fact what you wanted to happen. Just not necessarily the way that you wanted it to play out, but it is what it is. So ride the wave. Take the opportunity to be a healthier individual, to change your daily routine, to clean out your headspace if your headspace is not a safe space. This is something that is already in the works. There is no going back. There is no undoing it. So you might as well just dive in head first and see where it takes you. It'd be pretty cool. It's actually going to turn out awesome. The one thing that's going to prove to be a challenge over the next couple of months is a sense of feeling rusty with one-on-one interactions. You know, you've been stuck in the same routine for a long time. And so the thought of change is both scary, exciting, and intimidating all at the same time. So the more you can kind of go back over any communication skills, any networking skills, any ways in which you relate to other people, and practicing being your authentic self. You know, I've heard it said, if you want to be a certain kind of person, start making choices and taking actions and mimicking the behavior of that type of person, and then you will start to make choices and establish patterns and become that type of person. So right now, it's probably very hard for you to imagine what the future is going to look like because there's so much change happening. So imagine a feeling. When you imagine the future, imagine a feeling. Maybe that's a feeling of independence, freedom, financial prosperity, whatever your feeling is. Try and focus less on, I want that feeling to come from this achievement or this destination or this thing. Just think, I want to feel free. I want to feel financially free, or I want to feel like I have creative control in my career. Or so commit your time and energy to putting into practice this new way of being, and by the spring you will be that new person. So anything you can do at all right now to be mindful of the old you versus the new you. How does the old you behave? What kind of choices do they make? How do they spend their time? And then imagine the new you. How is the new me going to spend my time? What kind of choices do they make? What kind of action do they take in their day? So big changes, but it's leading to some really cool things happening for you. And by the spring, you're going to totally know where you're going and what's happening. So don't worry. This might be a time of feeling foggy, but step by step and day by day, you will get to exactly where you wanted to be. So don't fight the current. Capricorn. For you, dear Capricorn, this full moon lunar eclipse happened polarizing your 5th and 11th houses. So how you see yourself as a creative individual, as a sexual or sensual individual, as a bright and shiny individual, there's been a focus on who you are in the context of greater society. And over the last couple of years, you've really made some huge changes. Some of the big focus for you has been on career, finances, and a professional identity. You have evolved not just on a personal level, but also on a professional level, and made some really great strides that, you know, a year or two ago, you wouldn't have even imagined that you would be in the place that you are right now. So now that you're starting to see new challenges, new destinations, new things, there's a little bit of a feeling for you like, oh my freaking God, I thought I figured things out. Seriously, I have to deal with another thing. So try to give yourself as much time as possible, whenever possible, to rest, to recharge your batteries, to do things that make you feel better. You know, thinking about life, or at least the next few months, as a marathon. You don't want to set a pace that's unreasonable. You want to keep a reasonable pace that allows you to take breaks and rest and recharge. Balance that work with play. Make sure you have silly time, whether it's hanging out with children or bringing out your inner child and finger painting on your day off. Try and be silly, because you are having to deal with a lot of not fun realities right now. So the more you can balance that out with fun realities, the better. The Mars retrograde is happening in your 6th house, which is where the focus on finance is kind of getting another challenge right now. Mars is the action planet, and then the 6th house is daily life, but especially work. So there's a sense of like the work that you've been doing just isn't enough to pay the bills, or perhaps new bills have come up, or perhaps the work just isn't as consistent or frequent as it needs to be. So you're having to really kind of think about how you can use your time wisely, but you can only do what you can do. And if you're already pushing yourself to the limit, then that's when it's time to try to brainstorm a different kind of solution. We only have enough hours in the day. So if you're not making enough money with those hours, then finding another job or asking for a raise so that you get more dollar per hour. I see you having to really work out the practicalities of some not fun realities. But what you have to look forward to is a big kind of about face, a massive shift by the spring, in which the ways in which you see yourself as a struggling individual is going to change. When we struggle for so long that we see ourselves as a struggling individual, then it limits our perception or even our hope of what is possible in the future. So what I'm telling you, you can look forward to in the spring is that you are going to have this massive shift in which by the spring, you see yourself as a successful and prosperous individual. And it's not just going to be because your outer world starts to reflect that, either with more money or more hours or whatever, which will happen. But the biggest change for you is going to be an internal change in which you see yourself as powerful, magical, creative, and with unlimited potential. So one day at a time, just one day at a time. If you keep trying the same thing and expecting different results, it's time to try a different approach. I am hopeful for you because the sense of empowerment that you are experiencing is going to make everything possible. And if you compare how you feel now to how you felt a couple of years ago, where you felt like you were powerless in a lot of ways, the ways in which you have empowered yourself over the last couple of years are just going to keep getting better and better and better. So believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and you will absolutely overcome these challenges. You are an amazing individual. So anytime you feel bogged down in the present, take a moment to just reflect on how things were super different 2 years ago, and you'll feel a lot better about how far you've come. So congratulate yourself. Things will get better. Aquarius, the slow evolution that you've been really challenged with is a lot like Leo. Often we are so stuck in how things are and what we believe is possible that we become locked into a routine, and we don't really see how things are changing, and we don't necessarily notice how we ourselves need to change to accommodate, to improvise, to adjust. There's been a need for you to really stretch beyond your comfort zone, and your focus primarily has been on your career, your financial success, and what it is you do for a living. And you've made immense progress with that. But in the last week, you probably had a bit of a shakeup when it comes to either your home, your family, or your emotional health. And it's one of those moments where you realize, like, there's no money in the world can buy happiness if we have an empty space inside of our hearts that just isn't being filled. I mean, money can definitely buy some happiness, don't get me wrong, but the ways in which you've developed yourself on a professional level are now reaching a place of completion. And the focus is now shifting on developing yourself with the same confidence and the same willingness to change on an emotional level. And in a lot of ways, you just kind of went, la, 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 yeah, that sucks, but whatever. My career is good and my life is good and I'm making lots of progress, but you can't ignore your emotional health. You've been doing that for a while, and now you're coming to realize that something within your emotional health, your home, or your family has to change. So give it your time and energy. Don't run away from the things that are coming up. This is the time that you have to face the reality of what's happening so that you can heal it. And then by healing it, by spring of next year, you're going to have a clear idea of what that new healthy emotional heart space or home that you come home to, what that's going to look like. So now that you're just really starting to, what's happening for you in the past week is that either something you've been ignoring has been finally brought to your attention in a way that you can't ignore it anymore, or the situations that you have been very well aware of for a very long time finally came to a head in a way that made it so that change is inevitable. Either you hit rock bottom, either you hit a point of crisis, or something was just the straw that broke the camel's back. But whatever it was, trust that it is leading to change. The change is inevitable from the point at which you stand here right now. Change is inevitable. And some of you may say, oh, thank God. And some of you may be afraid of what that change looks like, but it's definitely gotten to a point where change feels a lot less scary than things staying the same. So just go with it. Ask for help, reach out, try something new, be that squeaky wheel that gets the grease. It's time. Mars retrograde for you is in your 5th house, so it's all about getting serious about your spiritual awakening or your efforts to be the best human that you can be. It is going to be a time of having to examine your relationships either with your ego or your kids or your creativity, and you may feel just absolutely emotionally exhausted over the next couple of months, but there's a massive shift happening in the spring for you that is going to really clear the way for you to be a healthier, really joyful, creative individual. So trust that on the other side of this yuck is really awesome change. Just don't run away from your emotions, face them head on, and be brave. Be brave. You can do this. I believe in you. Pisces, the full moon lunar eclipse for you, dear Pisces, happened in your 3rd and 9th houses. So the moon was in your 3rd house, highlighting communication and social networks. and the sun was in your ninth house, highlighting expansion, newness, philosophy, education, and travel. So what's happening for you is all the work that you've been putting in over the last couple of years to make some serious changes in your life, not only in how you interact with society, but how you feel on a very personal level. Now, you know, you've done all the work, you did the renovation, you built the foundation, and now you're in a place where this new beginning is really, really starting to manifest, and it's starting to get exciting. It was a tough road to get here. You had a lot of moments of feeling like maybe you were doing the wrong thing or maybe you should give up, but you made it, and it is definitely a time to celebrate. So Mars is retrograde in your fourth house. It is a great time for you to really cement this fresh start, aligning with your ideals. The way that things are happening for you right now, it's almost like the floodgates are being opened. You're going to be getting far more work, far more interest in what you're doing, far more communication and written word. There's just a lot happening for you. So make sure to set a pace now that is going to work for you in the future. So establish now what a consistent, non-compromisable day off is, and always take that day off. Don't compromise that. Don't give it away. The people that are seeking you out, the ways in which abundance and prosperity is happening for you right now, you're not going to stop the flow. You're not going to ruin things if you set boundaries when it comes to your schedule and your availability. So that's on a personal and professional level. You know, friends will love you even if you say, hey, I don't have the energy to hang out tonight, but I will next time. You know what I mean? Same thing with a professional level. If you have, you know, a schedule and it's just the 5 days a week or whatever, maybe more, and your boss says, hey, is it possible, can I get you to come in on your day off? I really need to get some stuff done. You're not going to lose your job if you say no. Your boss is going to respect that you need at least one day off, right? So there's always that fear, can I live my ideal life and still have things turn out okay? Yes, you can. So set those boundaries, set that schedule, honor your unique individual needs, and keep taking those steps to align with your ideals. Everything is coming up roses, darling. Whatever it is that you're doing, I really hope that you're celebrating your achievements, your accomplishments, and, you know, this sense that your hard work is paying off. A really cool time for you. So that's all I've got, folks. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I was talking about today, please feel free to reach out. I have a website, www.queenbtarot.net. I have a full list of services there, online booking. You don't have to be local. I can totally do readings via phone call or video chat. So definitely check out my website. I love what I do. I love connecting with my clients. I love connecting with my viewers. So make sure to like and subscribe so you get all the updates anytime I post a video. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Whatever you can do for self-care, whatever you can do to hold space and rest and relax, make sure to recharge your batteries and love yourself unconditionally. All my love to you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah. Bye.